I'm really privileged to be here and to be a keynote speaker invited by COGA, to be one of three governors, a present sitting governor, two former governors who are part of this, and I think it goes to show you how much I think that COGA has as an offering for the state of Colorado in terms of all that you can give and really how leadership in the state, past and present, knows that and understands that. I know that there were times during my four-year term that my relationship with COGA was a little rough. Yesterday, the Denver Post called it long and contentious, the rules fight. And I thought, long and contentious is a word an editor uses who wasn't being bruised by daily stories about the rules for oil and gas. What I want to do is just kind of go back and set the stage and go forward and look at this, because I actually think there's some lessons to learn. Those are lessons both for us here in Colorado, but I believe lessons that people around the country should pay attention to as well. When I ran for governor as a candidate, I talked about developing a new energy economy in Colorado. And the whole premise of that is we could use clean domestic energy, that we could produce energy in an environmentally sound way, that we would see job creation or economic development as a part of it, and really that we would find a way to do this equitably toward ratepayers, meaning that we could hold the cost of energy down for ratepayers. We called it the 4 E's: energy, environment, economic development, and equity. And really, that's what it was about. What was interesting, even as I campaigned, but then as I became governor, I think there was a real tension, and tension may be too soft of a word, between the fossil fuel industries, including the natural gas industry, and my administration. I want to talk a little bit about that tension, because I think there are places in this country where this is still playing out. And really the industry, I hope, will think about our Colorado experience and see if there's things that we can do around the country to sort of help with that tension that still exists. That tension was a product, I think, of a couple of things. And this is just generalizing here, because there may have been other parts to it. But in part, it was, a holdover from years of a tension that existed between people who considered themselves environmentalists and people who were in the fossil fuel industry. And there was a real sense that the twain shall not meet. There wouldn't be common ground found among them, even though there had been a lot of work done, both the industry and by the environmental community, to find common ground. There was still vocal folks from the industry and certainly from the environmental community who still kept some of that alive, and I think our administration actually did not benefit from that tension. And the second is this sense that a lot of industries have, that they deal with the zero-sum game, that if something is added, something's going to come away. So this guy's talking about putting additional, renewable energy or doing additional energy efficiency. It's going to really impact over time, it will impact the fossil fuel industries. And certainly that perception was something that I experienced as a candidate, as I said. Even though if you look back at our earliest documents in the campaign, we talked about wanting to make natural gas part of the new energy economy. Now, the perception was fed by a couple of things that I did immediately as governor and my administration did that I'm sure made people in the industry very nervous or nervous in a more serious way than even at the beginning. We came in and said we have to overhaul the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. It was 7 individuals. It was required by statute that 4 of them be from industry, and I just felt that lacked a balance. And there are people in this room that probably still disagree with me, but I really believe that balance was key to this. And the second thing, after we overhauled the industry, the commission, the second thing that we did was we began a process of rewriting the oil and gas rules. And, it's one of those deals where we made mistakes along the way. And I'm going to tell you up front, I believe that my administration did some things that we should have done differently as it relates to this relationship with the industry. Our first draft of the rules, most people looked at that draft and thought that they were written by someone from the Kremlin circa 1975. And it's not true, they weren't, but it was kind of a draft that we expected people to react to. And the fact of the matter is that we tried very hard over the course of debating those rules to get to the right place where what we said would happen, that the industry could thrive and that we would be assured that we were protecting those things that we considered precious here to Colorado, that we could find that balance that involved our ability to say the extraction process is, in fact, environmentally sound. And we kept talking about the balance. But we had our naysayers, right? And the naysayers said, well, listen, if you do that, if you rewrite those rules in that way, jobs will go away. This was, remember, in 2008, prior to the downturn, they said jobs are going to go away. They said you really can't put in place a process that you're contemplating that's going to be a permitting process that can be streamlined. This is going to take 180 days. I had people sit at my table in the governor's office and say, it'll take you 180 days to permit this. When we asked for the first state in the country really to try and put together comprehensive planning for wildlife management, there was a lot of feedback on us. I had people back me into corners throughout the state, a great deal of anger. And the whole time we kept saying, we're trying to find the right balance. We're trying to make sure this industry can thrive, this industry can do better than just survive. But at the same time, we're trying to ensure that we do right by those other things in this state that we believe make this state a great place to live. Air and water, and wildlife, even the communities that we live in. And so, we had the naysayers, and they said jobs are going to go away. We get the rules put in place, and then we're in the worst downturn that we've experienced since the Great Depression. And what happens? Jobs go away. And there's an old fallacy of logic. It's in Latin. It's called post hoc ergo propter hoc. If it happens after the fact, then it happens because of the fact. And in this case, jobs went away, and everybody said that's because of the rules. We said, no, we believe in the rules. And we were pretty adamant that we would see in Colorado the level of drilling that we believed would be able, where we'd be able to take advantage of this beautiful resource of natural gas that exists in this state, and that we would do it in an environmentally sound way. We just had to get the economy to this better place. I mean, natural gas had gone from $13 an MCF to $2 an MCF over a 2-year period, and now we needed it to come back. And as it came back, we began to see actually drilling come back. And this isn't the punchline, but I'll tell you that it was somewhat gratifying recently to sort of look at this and see a couple of things. Number one, that permitting in the state for natural gas permitting in the state is actually about half of what it was when I became governor with the new rules. The second thing is that for us to look and say, out of all the states in the Intermountain West, there was only one state. I looked at this about 3 weeks ago because I'm writing an article for the Colorado Lawyer magazine. There was only one other state that had more active rigs, it's New Mexico, than the state of Colorado. In terms of just active drilling rigs, so the jobs are, in fact, coming back. The resource is being pumped. We have this great resource. And for us, I think what we can look at and say now is, we said all along, natural gas could be a part of this new energy economy. And what we can look at and say, it is a part of it. It's not like we're at a time where everything is finished. We're going to talk about that. But in fact, it is a part of it. Because you can say, domestic, natural gas is domestic to Colorado for certain. Clean, natural gas burns much cleaner than for instance, coal. And I know there's some coal interest in the room, and I'm not one of those that discount the possibility for coal being able to be extracted and burned in a clean fashion. There are people that just discount that. I'm not one of them, but what I will tell you is I believe that natural gas is a cleaner burning fuel if you just compare it to what we're dealing with today in terms of coal plants, particularly older and more inefficient coal plants. So it is domestic, it is cleaner. We have seen job creation as a part of it, and quite frankly, it is affordable. It helps us when we look at the kinds of transitions to a cleaner economy to look at the pricing for natural gas and say we can do this and protect ratepayers. I sat with the governor of Illinois, Governor Quinn. He had vetoed 2 bills, coal to synthetic gas bills. He had a lot of constituent groups that were in favor of these bills, but he vetoed them for the simple proposition that they lacked adequate protection for ratepayers. So if you think about what policymakers think about and what they wonder about and what they worry about, they do worry about the environment. They do worry that this is a domestic product and actually can help us enhance energy security. But they also want to pay attention to ratepayers. So we said that it would be a part of a clean energy economy, but for us, the real touchstone moment for proving that up came in 2010. And I think this is something that we can offer as a template to other places around the country, that this very day struggle with the production of natural gas and struggle with sort of communities that are still at odds over different parts of the gas extraction process, including hydraulic fracturing. Because what we were able to do in 2010 is write a bill that we called the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act. And we brought constituent groups together that in many respects had done very little as allies and oftentimes had been at loggerheads. We had in a room together the utility, so Xcel Energy. Susan's here on the panel with us. Xcel Energy was there. The natural gas producers were there, and representatives from several of the bigger producers in Koga there at the table, along with environmentalists, people from Environment Colorado, other environmental groups represented by them. Legislative leadership, importantly, legislative leadership that was bipartisan. The Senate Minority Leader, Josh Penry, the House Minority Whip, Frank McNulty, two pretty prominent Republicans sitting there with Democrats and Democratic leadership helping us think about how to construct this Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act. It was really about fuel switching. We had the Environmental Protection Agency sending out letters to 37 different states talking about the possibility for noncompliance and our ability to look at fuel switching and change out nearly a gigawatt of power with just Xcel. It's since been more than a gigawatt of power with Black Hills changing out 80 megawatts that was coal and now is gas. But to look at this and say, we can do this switch and we can do it in a way that actually helps us file a state implementation plan that will bring us into compliance for the Environmental Protection Agency. It was really important that we were able to look at the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act as part of an environmental solution by something that was sort of being dictated to us by the Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C., and say, this is good for the state of Colorado. This is good for the natural gas industry. This is good for the citizens of this state. And again, what was important to us? It was important that it was domestic, that it was clean, that we could look at it and say that it would be an important part of our economy, and finally that we could do the fuel switching and do it with the right protections in place. Now, this isn't the end of the story, right? We passed Clean Air, Clean Jobs, and then it goes through the Public Utilities Commission. There's still a lawsuit pending that's about that, but even with all that aside, you have to look at the industry and say there's a lot that's still evolving, and it's important for the industry to think about what's evolving and what role you play in creating a clean energy economy, not just for Colorado, but for America. What role does the natural gas industry play? If you don't read the newspaper, then you may not have seen the kinds of controversies around the country that are presently created by hydraulic fracturing. The places where there are moratoriums, where governors have declared moratoriums for all or part of their state, and understanding that there's a group of people advocating for that because of what they feel is the case about hydraulic fracturing. We felt very good about our fracking rules. I was at a governor's conference this weekend up in Aspen, and one of the governor of Massachusetts, said, where's the gold standard for regulation of natural gas drilling? And I would have said in 2008 that Colorado was the gold standard, but I don't think that's the case anymore now that you have Wyoming and Texas, Louisiana, with complete transparency regulations. I see that my successor, John Hickenlooper, yesterday announced that Colorado was looking at going in that direction. I think David Neslin's here, who's the staff director for the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, the executive director, and I believe that's a good idea. I believe Colorado becomes the gold standard for extraction once again if we in fact go to complete transparency where hydraulic fracturing is concerned. I'm very proud of the work that David Neslin and Mike King and those individuals are doing to ensure that we keep this balance in place, that we look at all those ways where we appropriately regulate this industry while trying to find ways to ensure that it thrives, as I've said a few times now during the course of these remarks. And I really do believe that that is the full intent of those individuals, because I work with both of them. And I have great respect for both of them. And all along, that was our thinking, that we could do that. And so I think you'll see that the regulations are somewhat nimble, and they can change, and they can change over time. And it's important that we do all we can to satisfy communities outside of the industry that this is, in fact, a clean industry. People look at it and they look just at the emissions and say, well, you reduce the NOx, you reduce the SOx, you take away the mercury altogether if you compare it to coal. And in fact, that is cleaner burning, but it has to be environmentally sound in the way we extract it too. And there have been a couple of studies, the study out of Cornell and the study out of Duke, where the industry is going to have to respond, where it's important for the industry to answer those questions. And it's interesting because most of the things that I've seen as questions that are raised, let's take hydraulic fracturing. The science answers that question as well as the geology. Yesterday I was in Greeley, Colorado with the state geologist. He gave this wonderful presentation that described hydraulic fracturing in a pretty detailed way, described where the aquifers are in Colorado, where in fact we're getting the tight shale gas, and that there's 5,000 feet of shale between them. And it's really important to look at that and just use the facts to understand that the industry has a variety of ways that they can protect from methane escaping, for fugitive methane, but from benzene or toluene getting in the aquifers. There's all sorts of things that the industry can do to that, and actually it's all part of doing this business in a responsible and environmentally sound way. And I feel very good about the natural gas industry in Colorado doing just that. There is a lot of conversation still about water. And in the West, water is a very important issue. Certainly if you look at what's happening in Texas, where there's a severe drought in southern Texas, there's actually a conversation between cattle ranchers and gas producers about who's going to get this scarce commodity, this water. And it's an important question for us to answer in Colorado as well. But what's really significant is that there is technology that's really on the fore for us to be able to take processed water and to return it to clean water. Some of that technology is already deployed. We need to deploy it at scale, but as an industry, we need to understand that water and energy production are tied together, really hand in hand. And I would argue water, food, and energy are tied together. It's a longer speech, and I've just got a couple of minutes left in the remarks, but what the point of the matter is that if you look at hydraulic fracturing, the problems that people raise there are absolutely solvable, and they're solvable by the industry. If you look at processed water, the issues that people talk about are solvable by the industry. If you think about the need for monitoring, we've got a very exciting thing happening at CSU. Brian Wilson, who runs our Engines and Energy Conversion Lab, I always get that wrong, it's Energy and Engine Conversion Lab. Brian's here. We've done some fantastic things out of that laboratory. We've done some fantastic things with the natural gas industry out of that laboratory. But we have a company that we have converted from the laboratory, tech transfer, into the marketplace, and we're raising money for this company now, but it has the ability, using an enzyme process, to give you real-time monitoring of benzene, toluene, and a variety of other chemicals in the ground, in the water, but it's real-time monitoring, a thing that would help the industry immensely. Be able to go to places where there are moratoriums and say, we can do this, we can do it in an environmentally sound way, and the technology is only getting better for us to do it. But it's important for the industry to understand their place in that. Certainly, the issue of natural gas vehicles is a path forward for that industry as well. As we talk about markets that we're opening up, certainly there's the electricity market, but I would say as well, natural gas vehicles. And I know that Governor Hickenlooper and his administration are thinking a lot about that and focused on it. So I close just by saying to you that Stephen Covey, he's a fellow from Utah who wrote a book wrote a lot of books. One of them was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There are great lessons out of the 7 habits. But one of those lessons is that people should try at all times to deal with what he called an abundance mentality. And an abundance mentality would be the opposite of a zero-sum game mentality, where you think somebody else gains, and that means you lose. We know the demand for energy in this country is going to increase in a serious way. I believe that we have to pay attention to how we address that demand for a variety of important environmental reasons, but that we shouldn't be caught up in a zero-sum game thinking as we address that increasing demand. That if we use an abundance mentality, that if we think that natural gas is one source and a very important source for cleaner burning fuel, but think about the other things that are part of this conversation, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and really do what we can to be a part of that, to have all of these industries work together as sort of a group of industries willing to tackle the problems of this country that have to do with increasing energy demand and that likewise have to do with clean energy and the need for environmentally sound energy consumption and energy production, then we have a path forward. We have a path forward in this country, and the natural gas industry is a part of it. Thank you.